¿Cómo estás?
Muy bien.
Muy bien.
You too?
Okay, you know what? We ain't new. This ain't new. By now, y'all should already know. So I don't care what language it's in, if it's in Japanese. Konnichiwa, genki desu ka? I don't care if it's Spanish. Hola, ¿cómo estás? I don't care what language it's in. I need some energy. How are you today? Hello, how are you today?
Muy bien.
Que divino, que divino.
TMI, TMI. So, today we are talking about this thing called mysticism. So I have a question. Raise your hand if during this past week you got into a conversation with a friend, family member, somebody about mysticism or what it means to be a mystic. Okay, those who raise your hand, feel free to go out into the light. Because apparently y'all are different than the rest of. No, seriously. That's not really something that we generally have conversation about, right? Like we don't really have, we talk about the weather, we talk about politics, we talk about the weather, like we talk about the stuff that's going on in our regular everyday lives. Very rarely do we talk about that because there's this one level of spirituality, and we may get into conversation with people about that. Just this rooted groundedness in what it means to be in spiritual practice or in spiritual community or being a spiritual person or forgiveness. But we don't really often get into conversation when we're talking about dissolving into our spirituality so completely that everything is gone, and yet everything exists in that breath. We don't do that very often, but we're gonna do it today. So, for those who are like Superman and you are able to use your telescopic vision to see this tiny little print, read with me. For those who cannot, let's just listen. So mysticism is the realization of oneness with all that is. When we study the teachings of the mystics, we find profound similarities in their experiences. Though they may come from different parts of the world, different cultures, religions, and different time periods, their messages are pointing to the same universal truth. We are all one with the one. And of course, you know that, like, I had to put Dr. Stephen Strange in the Ancient One up there because Ray is a comic book nerd. So, but did anybody in here not see the Doctor Strange film? Okay, so we're going to definitely have to have a movie night specifically looking at Marvel films as well, because this particular scene goes into the whole idea of mysticism. But beyond that.
Didn't you teach us a class about mysticism?
Yes, I did. Thank you, Doug. So, in talking about what mysticism is, it's important to know what it is not. Oftentimes, when we think about mysticism, we think ayahuasca, peyote, DMT, some other thing like, because there are people who are so into this mystical experience, they are mystical junkies who jump from one shaman event to the next drumming circle, to the next, to the next, to the next smoke, sip, drink, chant, drum, dance, ecstaticness to... But they're missing the point. Like, they're missing the point. It's not about the substance. It has nothing to do with the dance. It has nothing to do with the drum. It has nothing to do... The drum and the dance, and those are gateways into. But simply being present where we are right now is a gateway into. Simply meditating right here, right now, is a gateway into. Because one of the things is, this whole thing about the numinous, like, is that a word that, like, raise your hand if you're familiar with that word, the numinous. Okay, cool. So, I want to talk about why we tend to avoid the numinous or the mystical experiences. And then we're going to jump back into what I was saying before. So first of all, what is the numinous? Numinous is a concept derived from the Latin numen, meaning arousing spiritual or religious emotion. Mysterious or awe-inspiring. Right? That's generally the numinous. When it arouses us to be and know and dive deeper into this whole thing of what it means to be in this one life. Numinous. Describing an experience that makes you fearful yet fascinated. Awed yet attracted to the powerful personal experience of being overwhelmed and inspired. How many of us like feeling fearful? How many of us like feeling overwhelmed? Oh, and yet, if we're going to dive into the numinous, we may be risking feeling overwhelmed and feeling fearful. Do we see where the paradox of, I want it, and yet, both exist? So check this out. Numinous. So we have, I'll make sure I don't push the wrong button this time, Tracy. So we have the numinous, sublime awe, confusion, threat, curiosity, fear, goosebumps, beauty, chills. Like all of this, the potential of all of this exists when we step into the numinous. And we have to think about, but why? If the numinous is such a great thing, like it's my ability to know what God is on a deeper level. Then why is I got to be afraid of it? Because it involves death. It involves us dying to this identity that Ray thinks Ray is something. Meaning something separate from the all that is. And I'm not. There's only one power and one presence, God the good, omnipotent. It is all there is. Goes by many names. What did the song say? You can call me Ray, you can call me RJ, you can call me by whatever name you want to call it, but it's still God. So we call God water. We call God sky. We call God stage. We call God Theodore. We call God clicker, or whatever Tracy calls this thing. We call God microphone. We call God Ronnie. We call God by many names, and yet it's still only God. So in order for me to go there, though, I have to stop thinking that I'm my bank account. I have to stop thinking that I am my trauma. I have to stop thinking that I am my baggage. I have to stop thinking that I am this. I have to stop thinking that I'm that. I have to stop believing that I, in and of myself, matter. Because I'm not matter. I'm not matter. I'm spirit. Showing up as this. Everything that we think matters is spirit. So in order for me to go here, though, I have to die to the concepts and ideas of what I've been taught and conditioned to believe. And that's why we avoid this. We may think and we may say, Dr. Ronnie, you did that visioning thing and it was cool, but I'm probably not going to come back because, something like I just... Yeah, you can twist your lips and form all kind of words and sentences. Doug, I'm probably not going to come back to meditation because, I have a really difficult time with meditating because my mind wanders. You twist your lips and say all kind of stuff. All kinds of stuff. Sue and Marianne, prayer. Anything that is blocking us from diving deeper into our spiritual practice, our spiritualness, is blocking this. And the reason it's doing so is because we are giving into the fear and the dread and the danger and the confusion, the dissonance. We're giving into that far more. So I was visiting my oldest son, what's today? Sunday. Today's Sunday. I went over his house Friday. So it was me and him and the baby, because the other two kids were in school and his wife was in Philly at the time. And he told me, so, we all as a family, we started meditating every night. I was like, oh, cool. And he said, we started with this kids video. And he put the video on, and he said, so it's about like this pond, and the narrator says, and there's fish, and there's a happy fish, and there's an angry fish, and there's a frustrated fish, and there's a friendly fish, and there's all these things. And the narrator says, just remember, you're not the fish, you're the pond. Be the pond. Don't be the fish. See the fish swim. See the fear swim. See the confusion swim. But don't acknowledge that I am fearful. I am confused. I feel it. I see it swimming by. Marianne said, it doesn't matter what the situation is. It doesn't matter the circumstance. There is that which God is in and through it all. But if we give in to this idea of, but I'm afraid of it, then we surrender and we go to what this pigeon says. So, hey, Stephen, what's the opposite of numinous? That's the names I gave them. He looks like a Stephen to me. And Stephen says, the numinous, the opposite of it is commonplace, everyday, normal, ordinary, run-of-the-mill, unexceptional. Ooh, that's tough. When we are not stepping into our greatness, our divinity, when we are not living from that place, it's ordinary. It's not extraordinary or extraordinary. And if I would venture to ask you whether we talk about an anthropomorphic God from our old whatever backgrounds, or we're talking about the God that we know right now of our understanding. Is God simply ordinary or extraordinary? So if God is extraordinary, and God is all there is, and it's what you are, then how are you not also extraordinary? In every way. Like, you don't have to be an extraordinary vocalist. You're extraordinary because you breathe. You're extraordinary because you're here. You are the Word made flesh. You're extraordinary. You are a living, breathing demonstration, manifestation of all that is in human form. How is that not extraordinary and magnificent and beautiful and wondrous? But we do our damnedest to avoid it, to run from it, to deny it, and shame ourselves into feeling it so that we don't. We are everything but a child of God when it comes to that. Why? What would happen if we just shifted a little bit? Like several months ago, I said something, and Dr. Rodney took it. I think she spoke the next Sunday, or somewhere in there, and she said, so Dr. Ray mentioned for 30 seconds, or 10 seconds, I don't even remember what it was, and she said, that's all you have to do. Engage this for this amount of time, 10 seconds of, I'm exceptional, I'm magnificent, I'm wonderful. Soon as the feeling of lessness comes in, entertain the numinous. Make that your chant, because we already know chanting is one of the gateways into the mystical. You don't have to chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. You don't have to chant Om Shanti Shanti. You can chant I am wonderful, amazing, and beautiful. I am. I am wonderful, amazing, and beautiful. I am. I am wonderful, amazing, and beautiful. I am. And then Marvin may step in and say, do you really think you are? I don't have to think I am. I know I am. Because we let our thinking mind cloud us. Because our thinking mind came from 5th grade science teachers and the kindergarten principal and Nana, who didn't know her God self, so she tried to beat the God self out of us. The neighbors who always labeled us as the bad kid, or the weird kid, or the strange kid, or the sissy kid, or the that kid, or the other kid. And we took the names and made them our own. But your name is divine. Your name is magnificence. Your name is omnipresence, omniscience, you are all that is. Nothing less. Make that your chant. We want to get to this place called the numinous, then we got to be willing to step outside of our comfort zone. As the graphic shows, where the magic happens. And yet that's where we tend to be most often. We say we want to be happier, we want to be more prosperous, we want to be, like, we can go through the whole thing. I can go through everybody in here, and I'm sure if I said, you got a magic wand, you got a genie bottle, what are your 3 wishes? And we can go through and we're going to have a whole bunch of stuff. This is what I want, this is what I want, this is what I want, this is what I want to be, this is what I want to do, this is what I want to have. This is what I want to be, this is what I want to do, what I want to have. Want to be, want to do, want to have. Want to be, want to do, want to have. But I don't want to work. Like I don't want to pray. I don't want to meditate. I don't want to tithe. I don't want to do that. It's easier to not do it. And I understand. We said we want to. I got that. But when it comes down to really doing it, like everybody in here would venture to say, we all want to serve. But when it comes down time to say, John, what time are we getting together to go to Baltimore State? Oh, man. So I got to change my day. I got to plan differently. I think something came up. I'm not going to be able to do it. Sorry. Because it's easier to continue to do what we were doing rather than gathering together to go to the Baltimore station and volunteer to serve food to men who, like, it's easier to not do. It's easier to not meditate. It's easier to not chant. It's easier to not vision. It's easier to not do. Because all we got to do is continue to do what we're doing. And let us be reminded, routine is one of the words that Steve said was the opposite of the numinous. Routine. How many of us are so conditioned by our routines that we really don't think about them very often? We get up, we do stuff without thinking. Like we're putting coffee in the coffee while we're doing the thing in the microwave. We're putting food in the cat's thing. All at the same time until we realized we put the cat in the coffee pot in the coffee. It was like, oh, I wasn't awake enough. But we were working on autopilot. Routine. If we want the magic, we got to get out of the comfort zone. Now, we talked about how ayahuasca and all this stuff is not it is a tool for, but you have tools right now. Because what activities cause your perceptions of identity, self-separation, othering, etc. to fade, revealing oneness, unity, love, self, I am, the infinite, the ineffable, the indescribable thing itself. Like, and I listed things up there like the arts, music, poetry, dance. All of those things help us because we get into the zone. Anything that puts you into the zone where time no longer exists is just as good as ayahuasca. You don't need to see psychedelic. Ronnie, why that pocketbook talking to me? What's with the pink pigeons? Like, we don't have to go there to understand that we're God. We really don't. But we think we do, so we push it away because we expect it to be that. We don't expect it to be, I see Jim this morning. I see John this morning. I see Rainika this morning. I see Mo this morning. And I see God. Like, we don't expect it to be just like that. But where do we and when are we willing to entertain any of this? How often do you invite such experiences into your life? How often do you listen to music that makes you, the only thing that exists right now is this song, this piece of music. It's not even me in a chair, it's just the music. We do it when we watch movies. You forget that that's why spooky movies are spooky movies. Because you forget that you're in the safety of a theater and you think that little girl's actually sitting across from you turning her head around. And you're like, oh, mommy. Like, you forget. When do you engage the forgetting in order to step into the spirit, the truth, capital S self, on a daily basis. Because once again, we say things like, I don't have hair right now, but you're supposed to brush your hair, comb your hair on a daily basis, or do something with your hair on a daily basis. You brush teeth, put Visine in your eyes, put lotion on, other than Tracy, because Tracy's ashy. Put lotion on. Like you do stuff. Sorry, Tracy. I'm calling a thing a thing. Like you have these daily routines. But is spirituality part of your daily routine? And not just spirituality. I mean stepping into it to such a degree that, anybody in here a dancer?
What does that mean? Okay.
When are you not a dancer?
Right.
Like, do you have to be dancing to be called a dancer? Does a practitioner have to be engaged in prayer in that moment, or what we call spiritual mind treatment, to be considered a practitioner? Or are they always a practitioner? Is a dancer always a dancer? Is a singer always a singer, whether they're singing a song or not? Like, we've seen film or whatever when someone's in a restaurant and they're like, I swallowed a grape. And anybody see the film Mrs. Doubtfire? Okay, so you remember the scene when Mrs. Doubtfire runs and jumps over there to save dude's life. Because a doctor, not that he was a doctor, but a doctor who sees someone pulled over side of the road. Something's going on. I'm a doctor. What's going on? Is there something I can do? They don't say, I'm Stephen Strange. I'm the world's best doctor. I'm sorry I can't help you. If a doctor is a doctor, then they serve. If a singer is a singer, then they sing. Whether they sing on key or not, they sing. If you are God, how often do you step into being what that is on a regular, daily basis? So, in the science of mind, 2 quotes. A mystic is one who intuitively perceives truth, and who, without conscious mental process, arrives at spiritual realization. The mystics include the great prophets, the inspired writers, the illumined souls of all ages. All the mystics have recognized the absolute unity of God as human. That's the ultimate thing, is they have recognized there is no separation. There is only that which God is, and God is every single human. Every single thing. It's all God. And so the mystics dissolved into this awareness where separation faded away. Next passage says, in moments of deepest realization, the great mystics have sensed that one life flows through all, and that all are some part of that life. There's only one life. That life is God's life. That life is all of those things we named. Wondrous, magnificent, joyful, loving. And that life is our life right now. So if God is love, how often am I, as God in the flesh, loving? If God is magnificence, then how it expresses as me is magnificent. How do I demonstrate that? How do I walk that walk? Because if I'm not, then I'm not living my truth. I'm not living the truth. I'm living a lie that somebody else gave me. Matthew Fox said, and I specifically put this one up there, resolution of conflicts can serve to awaken us to a deeper understanding of the dignity and value of all peoples, and affirms the integrity of the individual as well as supporting the importance of fostering social responsibility, environmental awareness, and the creation of a loving, just, and sustainable world. Resolution of conflicts. So, I would venture to say that every single one of us has a conflict with someone or something on some level. Are we willing to do the work to resolve that conflict? And the conflict, once again, can be something simple, can be something profound. But the question is, if it's conflict, Are we willing to do the work to resolve the conflict? In order to, now he says, creation of a loving, just, and sustainable world. How do we, in CSL, how do we say that phrase? Because we got different wording for that phrase. What do we say? A world that works for all. That's what that is. A loving, just, and sustainable world. A world that works for all. That means we don't ignore the koalas in Australia. Because loving, sustainable, that means we understand that if what I do to my brothers and sisters affects me, then, and there's only God, then when I am disrespectful to how God is showing up in any form, am I not also in some way disrespecting that which God is as me? Am I not committing blasphemy against my own God awareness and God's self when I'm like, they're only koalas? Why are we making such a big deal about that? They're only kangaroos. Okay, so what? Like 3,000 of them burned up. So what? Okay, what? Like, it's not like it's all of them. Is that the consciousness that we want to live in? Is that a world that we want to live in? Because if not, then each of us has work to do. Every single one of us has some form of conflicting ideas, conflicting beliefs, conflicting relationships, something. And if we're not willing to do the work, then a loving, just, and sustainable world remains a dream. Amit Goswami in the Self-Aware Universe said, if ordinary people really knew that, and I don't like the word ordinary, but these are his words. If ordinary people really knew that consciousness and not matter is the link that connects us with each other and the world, their views about war and peace, environmental pollution, social justice, religious values, and all other human endeavors would change radically. If we understood that it's not about matter, it's about consciousness. It's not about stuff. It's about consciousness. What goes on in our minds and our hearts. Consciousness. What am I doing with my consciousness? Am I shifting the ideas and the beliefs and the paradigms in my consciousness? For example, we hear phrases like God, and oftentimes someone will say, so he. We'll gender it and give God he. Does that resonate with truth? Okay, so what if I say God, he, she? Some are like, yeah, that feels even stranger. Okay, so God, it. That just doesn't feel right. But the thing is, if we don't engage in that thought process of figuring it out, then we never figure it out. We stay with God as a he. It's how it's always been. Tracy and I just watched, it's the movie about Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
It's her initials.
No, not that one, the other one. Between the Sexes? No.
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that. And there's a part in the movie where the idea is this is how the laws have been. Women have, since the dawn of creation, been the subservient ones to men. Why are we changing the laws now? And she challenged them to say, just because something has always been doesn't mean it is right in this time and this era. Because if we're not challenging the laws, then based on that, then black people should still be sitting at that counter in Woolworths. Well, actually, we shouldn't even go there. You should still be in chains. Because that's what the law was. The law of the land said, but we evolved. The consciousness evolved, and so we broke the chains in matter. not in consciousness. We broke the gender chains in matter. Women can vote, but not in consciousness. We say that LGBTQ can be married in matter, on paper, not in consciousness. If we want to create a world that works for all, then we have to start with consciousness. Because as I change my consciousness, if there's, how many minds are there?
One.
There's only one mind. Oh. So it's sort of like in the swimming pool. Sorry, I'm going to go there. So it's like in the swimming pool. If we're all in the swimming pool, yes, and I go tinkle in that corner of the pool, it's all y'all. Yes. Sorry to have to go there, but I wanted it to be something graphic where you could grasp the idea. Because if it's something so concrete as that, and we can understand that, but when it comes to the numinous, that when Dr. Ronnie says there's someone for me to forgive, and she forgives, it creates a ripple effect in the entire consciousness of God that we all find forgiveness a little easier. When one person does their work, tipping point. When 10 do their work, a country changes. When 1,000 do their work, a continent. And when more than 1,000, then a planet. But we have to start with ourselves. Are we willing to do that work? Signs of mind. Remember, all of this takes place in a perfectly normal state of mind and has nothing whatsoever to do with the psychic state. It is not an illusion, but a reality. And it is during these periods that real revelations come. So once again, it's not about trying to attain some, I'm levitating. No, it's not about trying to attain some supernatural state that exists in our imaginations. It's about in the state of mind that you're in when you're driving in your car, when you're shopping in the grocery store, when you're picking up the puppy's poop, when you're on the phone with Verizon and you're trying to get customer. Option 7. Oh, I hate automated systems. It's that right there. Right there is where this opportunity expands. Be the pond. Be the pond. Only when the true essence of who we are becomes known to us can we, as humanity, turn away from the darkness of the past towards the light of the present. Then and only then can the whole cosmos finally become a place of harmony, peace, and happiness to all living beings. Then and only then can the whole what? Can the whole what? The whole cosmos become a place of harmony, peace. Not just a world that works for all, but a cosmos that is harmonious and loving and filled with joy. When we get to the essence of who we are, is that something we're willing to do, though, on a daily basis, even when the numinous calls forth fear and overwhelmingness of whatever it is, anxiety or confusion or whatever it is? Are we willing? A couple of years ago, I had a dream, and so in my dream, I started doing this years ago. Was in a shaman training thing and whatever, and learned how to call forth my council of elders. Yoda was on it, and Dr. Spock is. Don't judge me. Don't judge where I get my wisdom from. It's all God and it's all good. But I have a council, and the council told me something's getting ready to happen. Be ready. So I'm like, okay. Several nights later, I have a dream, and in the dream, there's a light. And the light is extremely bright and extremely warm and comfortable. And I start to go closer to it. And I get so close to it This part of my rational thinking, logical mind said, you do know what light this is, right? You know if you go in this, you're not coming back. And the other mind said, no, 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 no. It's not your physical death. It's your ego death and your logic death. That's what's going to die. And this, no, 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 no. He is lying to you. Do not listen to whatever he's saying. It is a lie. And you know which one I believed to listen to. The one that was instilling me with fear. So I didn't go in. And soon as I said no, the light went away and I woke up. And I remembered everything. And as soon as I woke up, I knew I was lied to. And I believed the lie. Had I stepped in, part of me would have died, but my awareness, my understanding, my acceptance and love of myself would have expanded so greatly that it's beyond words. And I denied myself that gift. And I said,
Can y'all bring it back? I'm sorry.
it hasn't come back yet, but am I willing the next time it comes up? Because the fear is going to be there again as well. When we are faced with it, are we willing to step forward even in the midst of being afraid? So our call to action this week, can we identify one thing that scares us and explore what it means to go beyond it? Identify one thing that scares us. No, it doesn't say identify that one thing that scares you and go do it. Doesn't say do it. Doesn't say do it. So Tracy ain't got to jump out of a plane this week. Doesn't say do it. Identify it and explore. That's all. Explore what it means to go beyond it. Number 2, listen to a piece of music, watch a movie, go to a museum, something, and immerse yourself into it. You ever heard of it? There's this author, teacher, guy named, I know Jim knows him, Mitch Horowitz.
Yeah.
Okay, so Mitch Horowitz, he has a book called Metaphysics and Depression. And somewhere in there, he references that he got into a conversation with someone and they were talking about film, movies. And the idea came up and it was, can a movie be a sacred scripture? And Mitch says, yeah. Why not? So when you're watching whatever it is you're watching, Hidden Figures, Harriet, Doctor Strange, whatever it is, you are potentially stepping into a sanctuary of expanded awareness that helps you evolve in consciousness if you immerse yourself into it. I know there's a couple here that frequent art museums, etc. Are we willing to go to an art museum or just museum and simply immerse ourselves into, listen to some music and not try to, but simply let the music be all it is. 3, read some of the works written by any mystics that interest you and meditate on their words daily for a week. There are so many mystics, Rumi, Hafiz, Lao Tzu, Emma Curtis Hopkins, Thomas Merton. There are thousands upon St. Thomas Aquinas, thousands upon thousands of whatever genre, whether it's Eastern or Western, but are we willing to pick one or pick a couple and go through the stuff but during the week, take a passage and simply meditate on it. Next, explore what you know, trust, believe, and how it impacts your life. Explore what you know, trust, and believe. So for example, right now, when I go, what's going in and out? What went in?
Fear.
But it's got a specific scientific name. Oxygen. And what came out? Carbon dioxide. Do we know that? And I mean, us in this room, right here, right now, do we know that that's oxygen going in and carbon dioxide going out? Or do we simply trust that what someone else said it is? Do we know it? That's what I'm talking about. explore the idea of what do I really know versus what do I trust versus what do I believe. We say this is a microphone, but how do I know that's actually what it is? I mean, I know Ted said it is, but how do I know that that's what it is? I'm trusting what someone else said. How do I know this is red? How do I know somebody somewhere back in the day didn't say, you know, ever since that Noah dude and the whole rainbow and taste the rainbow and the Skittles and ever since then, I just hate the whole thing. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to start teaching everybody, this is green. That's red. So how do I know this isn't green? Like really, how do I know? Someone taught me that it was red and taught me why it was red. But how do I know? I didn't explore the spectrum of light. I didn't sit in a lab and I didn't do. Someone gave it to me, I accepted it. So simply explore what have we accepted and what do we know. Just explore it. And then lastly, contemplate or envision what a world that works for all could look like for you. What could it look like? What would that mean? What might it mean? Simply allowing the mind to explore the idea. Anything on this call to action resonate with you? Go for it. Explore it. Be committed to it for 1 week. If it doesn't work, switch off. Do what I do. Get mad, eat a cupcake. It's not going to solve anything, but it tastes real good.
Be the padre.
Who said that? Be the pond. Yes, thank you, Creamy. Be the pond. Yes, thank you. So lastly, I'll read it first, and if it so resonates with you, let us read it together. I open my entire being in as many ways as possible to the infinite presence. Oh, y'all want to read it now? To the infinite presence and discover that I myself am the great mystery in expression. If that resonates with you as something that you are ready, willing to embody, because remember, Ernest Holmes said, the only God we will ever know is the one that we embody. If this is something that we are ready to embody, then let us say it together. I open my entire being in as many ways as possible to the infinite presence and discover that I myself am the great mystery in expression. Let's pray. Anchoring right here and right now in this breath. Simply allowing the body's intelligence of respiration to do what the body already knows how to do by breathing. Recognizing that this breath is ultimately God breathing itself in, through, and as this body. And it is from this place of surrender and awareness that I speak what I know. I know that that which God is all there is. And knowing that that allness and isness is present right here in, through, and as all that I am. And what is true for me is true for everyone in this room, everyone watching Facebook Live, everyone watching YouTube. It's all that is. And everything that God is, right here, right now, in this breath as well. So if God is infinite love, then I am that. I am. If God is infinite creative potential, then I am that. I am. If God is peace beyond any human understanding, then there is that part of my awareness that must also be that as well, because God is all there is. Spirit is all there is. There is only that one life, that one mind, the thing itself, living, moving, and having its beingness in, through, and as all that is. All that is not and all that is yet to be. It's all God. And knowing that it's all God, then it must also be all good. And so I anchor into this idea, this consciousness, where Holmes said that our words have just as much power as we put into them. Then right here and right now I surrender so that the full power of creation speaks this prayer of itself. That this prayer is praying itself. And knowing that, then I know that every resonant individual, every resonant place on this planet, the very soil is rich with the infinite potentiality of God. That right now, new growth is happening in the burned places in Australia and New Zealand and California, that waters are receding and dry land is showing up, that freedom, justice, equality for every human being is now making itself known. God cannot be enslaved. God cannot be victim of racism, sexism, or homophobia. So I understand and recognize that as I shift my consciousness and make those words of extinction, then in the mind of God, in the consciousness of all that is, they must vanish and fade away. And so right now, in gratitude, I surrender these words into the law, knowing that in the law it is already fully formed and fully functioning. That right now a world that works for all exists in the mind of God, and there is only one mind. That mind is God's mind, and that mind is my mind right now. And knowing that in my mind a world that works for all is right now showing up, demonstrating, and manifesting, then I take on my responsibility to be the steward that I am called to be to make this so. I surrender it knowing it is already done, knowing it is already so. And together we say, and so it is. Amen. Thank you. So